A big debate going on between Preds fans on Twitter right now. How should we look at Roman Josi's season with the Nashville Predators? Plus, who are the biggest threats to the Nashville Predators in the Western Conference right now in terms of making the playoffs? And a game of Preds Would You Rather on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day. Every single day, we are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I want to start out with a special shout out to our loyal Locked On Pred heads out there, the everydayers who tune into every single show. We love you guys, and we appreciate the support you give us week in and week out. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at the Hockey News.
Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. On today's show, Anna and I play a game of Preds Would You Rather? A couple of different scenarios that we will debate. Plus, we will look at the Western Conference, talk about teams behind the Predators in the standings we're most afraid of jumping us in the standings. Spoiler alert, Edmonton is definitely one of them. We'll talk about some others. Plus, who are some teams in front of the Predators right now that you could conceivably see them maybe taking on late in the season? First, though, main topic today, Roman Josi's season. The reason this is being brought up is because of a tweet from one Mr. Jared Stillman, who said Roman Josi has straight played like blank this season. There's a lot of people that jumped on, like our good friend, and I guess the guy who writes my paychecks, Alex Doherty, jumped on and put a bunch of sets. It's like, yeah, no, that's not the case. But there's also been a couple of people who have chimed in to say, you know what? Maybe he's got something here. Maybe it hasn't been the same season for Roman Josi. Thoughts on this? And I'll let you start. How should we judge Roman Josi's season with the Preds so far?
Well, I think on one hand, I think some of the people are correct in that this doesn't look necessarily like a typical Roman Josi season in some ways. He is playing a very different style of hockey. We're seeing different things from Roman Josi just because of Andrew Brunette coming in. He runs the system differently than, honestly, the previous two head coaches of the Nashville Predators. Peter Laviolette and John Hines both really ran most of the offense through Roman Josi. Mm-hmm. So the eye test is saying, hey, he's not playing the same way. Well, he's not playing the same way. He's not playing the same system. But does that mean that Roman Josi's season is straight up poo? No, it does not. Two things can be true at the same time, as my good friend Nick Morgan says. Roman Josi is playing a little bit differently this season, as are everybody else on the roster. We've talked about UC Saros, that this is a different looking hockey for Saros. He struggled some. I think some of the play in front of him has looked different. Everybody has had to make big adjustments to a new system. Roman Josi is absolutely no exception, even as a defenseman, because let's face it, he's one of the best offensive defensemen that we've seen in the NHL in past seasons. So it does look a little bit different, but looking different does not equate to being poo. That's the nicest way I can say that.
Yeah. It's funny because sort of the biggest thing, when you see maybe Josi's stats this season and see guys like, Forsberg and O'Reilly kind of handling the bulk of the offense, your first thought is, oh, maybe Andrew Brunette is, changing some things up. Maybe he's kind of pushing him back into more of, like a 50-50, the last few years in John Hines, like Roman Josi was getting like 65% of his starts in the, offensive zone. And, back when he won the Norris, it was closer to 50-50.
Right.
So our first thought was, oh, Andy Burnett is kind of moving Roman Josi back into that 50-50 role. And surprisingly, and looking at the zone start numbers on Hockey Reference, it hasn't necessarily been the case. In fact, there's an argument to be made that Roman Josi may be getting even more use in the offensive zone this year, as opposed to the John Hines year, which is kind of fascinating because there has been, maybe a change in his offensive output. And I think that's been the biggest thing. I mean, we're used to Roman Josi leading the Nashville Predators in scoring. He's done that for what has it been? 4 consecutive seasons now.
It's been a long run.
Yeah, 4 consecutive seasons now that he's led the Predators in scoring. So I think a lot of people are just like, oh, he's always going to be number 1 in the team in scoring. He's always going to be that 96-point guy or just, 2-3 points a game. And that hasn't happened this year. So I think maybe that's sort of where a lot of this talk is coming from, is because the offensive output or the stats haven't been as high as they have in year. I mean, he's still got, take a look here. He's still got 37 points, 8 goals, right, 29 assists in 44 games, which is pretty good. And I think 6 maybe among defensemen in the NHL right now. Yeah. So, it's not like he's going out there and doing nothing. It's just, I think, maybe a little bit less than what we're used to seeing him, especially compared to, somebody like Philip Forsberg, who's absolutely tearing it up right now.
Well, and if you look at so much of Nashville's offense is coming from that top line of Nyquist, Forsberg, and O'Reilly. I mean, they clearly have been Nashville's best line. At times, they've been Nashville's only offensively productive line, which is something that the Predators really need to work on. They want to get more lines consistently going offensively. But if you look at offensive production, it really is coming from those guys. And when those guys are on the ice, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes they're out there with Lazan Carrier. So much of the offense is maybe happening with them. But if you also look at Josi's stats and you look at kind of where is he predicted to finish this season, he is not tanking.
It's not that different.
It's not that different. If you take out that 96-point season that he had in 2021-22, that was just, huge. He's on pace for one of his best seasons. It would be like his 4th best season for goals, if you include that 2021-22 year. Assists would be the second most he's had behind that career year. Points is going to be second only to that 96-point year. So it's not that he is not producing offensively. I think it's just looking different. I think so much about his game is looking different. I do think defensively, like we joke about plus minus as like a total hoax and stuff. But if you look at that, again, it's not probably as good as it normally is. And if you look at some of his rougher games, some of the most, the poorest games defensively, those are games that the Predators have lost pretty significantly. So I think still how Roman Josi goes, so goes the Predators still in some ways. His worst games were like the 6-1 loss to Edmonton, a couple of the Calgary losses that were excruciating. He didn't have particularly great games. So I don't think you can underestimate how important Josi is to the team. But I also think to look at this season, to look at the numbers, and to eye test it, I'm just not sure how you land at he is straight up poop. Like you just can't get there if you really look at what's happening on the ice.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. I think it's a reflection of the team. Let's be clear. This isn't the same Roman Josi from, 2-3 years ago. And this isn't the same Roman Josi from back in the day, like back in his Norris Trophy season, back when,
Right.
whether it's him or Ryan Ellis or him and Shea Weber, it's not that kind of, shut down defender anymore, but he's still having, I think for me, just like a crazy good offensive season. And yeah, calling him straight up blank is, yeah, not accurate, Ann.
Not accurate. Well, I also think you have to realize this is not the same Nashville Predators team that
Right.
it was in 21, 22, or back in his Norris Trophy year. I mean, this team is playing a completely different style of hockey. So much of what we're used to seeing, I think across the board is going to be different. And friends, let's just always remember just a little truth is that volume is not wisdom. So just because
Right.
somebody says something loud and with an expletive, it doesn't make it true.
Yeah.
Just a general rule of thumb in life. Volume
Drag
does
his
not
ass,
equal
Ann.
wisdom.
Yeah. Drag his ass, Ann. Yeah.
I'm just saying, in general,
Yeah.
louder doesn't mean
Let's
smarter.
let's move on to a game called Preds Would You Rather. We're going to go through a couple of different scenarios, talk about what is something that we are more likely to want to see. We'll do that coming up in just 1 second. First, I want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. It's almost the halfway point in the season, Preds fans, and regardless of where we are in the standings, I want to remind you, you could still win big playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether studs like Philip Forsberg, Ryan O'Reilly, Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, Matt Duchene, and more would record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in a given game. To win a 100 times bet on sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Preds fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. All right, Ann, let's move on to a game called Preds Would You Rather. So here's how this is going to work. We're going to name two different scenarios,
Mhm.
and then we're going to debate which one we would rather see. This could be
Yeah.
anything from trades to outcomes to, anything like that. Anne, would you
Mhm.
like to start us off?
I will start us off. I'm going to start off with one. This is a topic that I know you and I haven't had a chance to discuss a lot recently together. So let's just see where this lands. Would you rather trade Cody Glass
Mhm.
or trust the process with him?
What's Cody Glass's contract? He has another year after
He
this,
does.
right? Let me look it up cap friendly real quick. Yeah, 2 year deal, 2.5. Um, I mean, at this point, and I think I would rather trust the process.
Hmm.
Because it's not like, he's a pending free agent or pending UFA, and you're running out of time to pick something with him. And if it really is, as Cody Glass said in his press conference, more of a mental thing, like more of a just sort of mentally adjusting
Yeah.
to the game, then I think there's a good chance of kind of fixing that and maybe get him back to the path where he was last year. I'm not confident in, Cody Glass becoming a, number one or number two center in the NHL anymore, but I still think there's some value. And because there's not really, a contract rush, it makes sense for the Preds to maybe hold on to him one more year just to see what happens.
Yeah.
What,
Interesting.
yeah, is that what you would have done?
I would trust the process with him. I think this year is such a tough year to evaluate a player's NHL career on with Cody Glass, and honestly, this is a young player who has had a tough career with injuries. That's still hard to evaluate his career on, but I don't think you throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I agree with you. I think give him time. Give Cody Glass a little bit of time. And I get where he's coming from. I mean, he's dealt with two pretty significant injuries, upper body and then lower body, or actually vice versa, lower body and then upper body, but who cares? It's the whole body. And I think, you give him time to kind of mentally get back, get the pressure off of, oh my gosh, I've been injured. And then you kind of have to fight through that. You got to get out there and take some hits and not be tentative. I think there's a lot to work through in that, but I think give him time to do that. And I really think we haven't yet seen everything he's capable of. I think he really could be an asset. I am not even willing to say he's not a top 6 guy. Not yet.
Really?
But
You're still holding out hope for that, right?
Heavens, yes. I think he really has just that natural talent. And I think if you can get him to a place where he kind of gets that joy back and feels more comfortable and can kind of shake off the baggage that comes with the kind of season that he's had, I think you trust the process with him. And I think Andrew Brunette is probably a good person to kind of walk this out with. So I'm trusting the process.
Gotcha. Here's one, Anne.
Mm-hmm.
If you knew that the Predators were going to miss the playoffs, would you rather have them compete and get as close as they could and go on a run late? Or would you rather trade at the trade deadline and possibly prepare for a lower lottery pick?
Oof. This is a tough one because this is a tough one for me because I do think there's value in making some trades at the deadline to prepare for next season. But here is what I will say. I say you still compete for a couple of reasons. Number one, you've got a number of young players that have not made a push in the late season. I know, last season in April, we were like, oh, they could still make it. But I think this is kind of a different scenario when you have like a Luke Evangelista, a Cody Glass, another season of Phil Tomasino understanding the 82 game season. So I think you continue to push. I also think you owe it to some of the veterans to be competitive. And I also think it does you good if you are looking to pick somebody up in the off season when you show that this is a team that is committed and competitive and closer to getting back to contention. I think it says something about a franchise when they commit to the tank. And I think it says something about the timeline. And I'm not a believer in that.
I think like this season was sort of I guess like the measuring stick for Barry Trotz. It's like, do we need to tank? Like,
Right.
do we need to sell somebody off? Because I don't think Barry Trotz wants to be the guy stuck in where the Predators have been, which is just good enough, have some good players to just sort of get in that hump and see what happens. I don't think Barry Trotz wants to be let's just get in and see what happens, guys. I think he wants to build a legitimate winner. So I think it's one of those things where, in this case, and I would love to see the Predators compete. The roster that they have is valuable, and I think we're going to find out more from this team if they get hot down the stretch, whether it's the guys that you'd want to step up and carry this team 5-6 years down the road are the ones doing it, like Evangelista getting hot, Tommy Novak getting back to form. Guys like, maybe Spencer Stastny comes up and takes a big role. That's kind of what I would want to see as a measuring stick for how this team does moving forward. I think if you start trading everybody and just play the young guys and the young guys struggle, you're not really going to learn a bunch.
Absolutely.
But I think if you're able to get into a competitive situation and some of those younger guys step up, I think you're going to have a better idea of what they can do. Or if the Predators compete late and, they come up short and Forsberg scoring 80, 90 points a year, or 80, 90 points by the end of the year, and those young guys don't step up, then we also learned something.
That's true.
I think that maybe we learned that we don't necessarily have a core that we need right now. So
Yeah.
either way, I think maybe seeing how far you can get might be
Yeah.
the best move. And I think we have time for one more.
All right. So would you rather re-sign Cole Smith or re-sign Michael McCarron?
I would rather re-sign Cole Smith.
Really?
Yeah, here's the thing. I think when you look at Cole Smith's game, I love the vibes that Michael McCarron brings. Michael
Love his
McCarron
vibe.
is the vibe guy.
He
And I love the fact that Michael McCarron, whenever he's been in the lineup, like he can be healthy scratch for 3 games, come back in and make a impact. Like, I mean, he's not going to score consistently score like a bunch, but you put him in there for 10 minutes and you're going to get some good effort and some good physical hockey for 10 minutes. I think Cole Smith, though, is a little bit more consistent. I think, it's funny. We talked about him last year just kind of being the fringe NHL player. And I think this year we've seen him sort of develop more into, from why is this guy on the ice over somebody like Eli Tolvanen into more of a, okay, in the right situation, this can kind of be a permanent, maybe 4th, 3rd line guy.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that range. I think he's been pretty solid as a penalty killer over the past 2 years. I think his speed and forechecking is really good. Very strong. Wins a lot of puck battles along the board, which is something that Andrew Brunette really values in his system. So I think, Cole Smith, I think this year, the narrative has changed from why is he out there into, okay, I think this is somebody that may be a piece for the Predators, at least for the next, 2-3 years, as somebody that you can play in that bottom 6.
Yeah, I like that argument. I will say for me, and I know I'm probably in the minority, I would re-sign both of them because I think they both contribute in your bottom 6 in ways that you need someone to contribute. Obviously, they're not going to be your scoring leaders, but I'm with you. I think Cole Smith has proven why he got the ice time that he got last season. But I'm with you. I'm like, Michael McCarron is all vibes, baby.
Yeah.
Like he's a vibes guy. He's also kind of your enforcer. Let's not leave Jeremy Lauzon to do it all.
Yeah.
I would re-sign both of them.
Okay, but that wasn't the question you asked. That's cheating,
I know.
man.
I was trying to dodge it.
Yeah, that's not the question you asked.
Between
the two, who would it be, real quick?
I'm going to go Michael McCarron, but it's 6-1 how Jesse did the other.
Okay.
Yeah, well, because I think he really helps Phil Tomasino as well. And he's really good on the penalty kill. So I'm going to go McCarron.
If you're signing Michael McCarron as Phil Tomasino's future line mate, there's
Batman and Robin, baby.
There is a massive problem that we're going to need to talk about too.
It's Batman and Robin. You can't break them up. It's Sonny and Cher.
Yeah, it's let's hope Michael McCarron can play on the first line someday.
There you go.
Coming up with some Western Conference talk. Who are the teams behind the Predators in the standings right now you're most worried about leapfrogging the Predators? Likewise, who are some teams in front of the Predators right now that you think maybe the Preds have a chance of going up and passing? We'll talk about that coming up in just one sec.
First, I want to let you know this episode's brought to you by our great friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience are what bring home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you are into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You're going to always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all of the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
All right, Ann, let's do some Western Conference Wednesday talk, shall we?
We
Today, we're
shall.
going to look at some of the teams behind the Predators that we are most concerned about leapfrogging the Predators in the standings down the road. We're also going to look at some teams in front of the Predators that could conceivably, fall out, and the Predators may take advantage of that. Luckily, Anne, we don't have to state the obvious. Edmonton Oilers, who have now won 11 straight games, because as of last night, they're
Yeah.
now officially ahead of the Predators in the wild card standings.
And have games in hand, because why not just stick it to us every which way?
They have 4 games in hand right now. It feels like that's more bad news for the LA Kings and Vegas Golden Knights,
Yes.
who are now within striking distance of the Edmonton Oilers. Yeah.
Are you surprised by that? Are you surprised by what Edmonton's been able to do?
No.
No.
It's
Me
Connor.
neither.
Remember that big slump was happening when Connor McDavid was in a down streak.
Yeah.
He's not in a down streak anymore, folks.
Yeah. Well, and I think there was a couple of them. Like, I know Matthias Ekholm in an interview said it was by far his worst start of his career. Like, I just think it was kind of an early perfect storm. But man, have they turned that around or what, my friends?
Yeah. And a couple of things has gotten better too. Like they've gotten some better goaltending
Yes.
from Stuart Skinner. The Jack Campbell debacle notwithstanding, Calvin Pickard has come back in. Shout out to his brother Chet, former Nashville first round pick. He's come in and has been like a good replacement level backup. So it feels like the Edmonton Oilers are starting to get better help there too. Is there another team behind Edmonton, Anne, that you look at and say, boy, they can make a run?
The team that really has me concerned, and this is a sentence that I never thought that I would say, the Arizona Coyotes. Now, did you ever really think that we would have a discussion on this year's podcast about how the Predators and Coyotes game could be a postseason game changer?
Yeah.
No, my friends.
I will say the Coyotes have been slumping a little bit as of late.
They lost in overtime, late in overtime. They got bless their hearts, they got a too many men on the ice in overtime penalty, and the Flames beat them on that overtime power play just with a few seconds left. But I will say this, I really do think, I know that they're kind of going through a little bit of a rough patch, but Arizona has sort of pulled some things together. And here is who I think is the difference maker for the Coyotes, and that, my friends, is our beloved Connor Ingram.
Yeah.
Connor Ingram, who really is the story of the Coyotes. Of course, they have Lawson Krause and they have Clayton Keller, and they're really getting offense up and down their lineup, which is great. But the big story for these Coyotes is that Connor Ingram has just been incredible. He's 15-8 in his starts, .919 save percentage, really has shown that he is a starting NHL goaltender for them. And I do think they could get hot. I think the problem is that they're going to need to do it now, because the April schedule is something to keep an eye on for the Coyotes, because they play the Canucks twice, they play the Kraken, they play the Flames, they play the Oilers twice, they play Vegas twice. That's kind of the end of their stretch. So this is a team to keep your eye on. I think what they do now and right after the All-Star break, I think is going to make or break their season. So this is a team I'm definitely keeping my eye on. And because of sneaky yet adorable and hilarious and beloved Connor Ingram.
Yeah. There's a couple of teams that I would pick. I would have said Minnesota earlier when they got hot, but boy,
they got cold.
They are experiencing John Hines hockey right now.
Hey now,
folks.
Hey now.
The other team I think a lot of people are maybe pointing to are Seattle. Just because they had a big winning streak earlier, but they're still, kind of a hodgepodge team. The interesting one, and is the Calgary Flames, who are the team right behind Nashville right now.
Yeah.
Because they're starting to get hot. 4 straight wins, 7-3 in their last 10. And a lot of the people that were kind of the cause of the Flames not doing well, like Nazem Kadri not performing well, like, Jonathan Huberdeau not performing well. They're starting to turn things around. Kadri has points in all but 2 games since December 16th.
Yeah.
And you also look, Jonathan Huberdeau is still not quite the player he was a few
Yeah.
years ago, but he's starting to kind of get hot. I believe he has 6 points in his last 5 games at this point. And also Jacob Markstrom has been playing really, really well here over the last
Yes.
little bit. So, that's the team that I look at behind the Predators that I look at and say, okay, that is somebody that I would be concerned about passing. The other team in front of the Predators right now, Anne, and this is surprising. So if Edmonton keeps getting hot, the team in front of the Predators that they could conceivably jump over at this point is the LA Kings,
Yeah.
who are now just 1 point in front of Nashville and have gone on a 1-5-4 slide. You're a little bit surprised by that.
I am a little bit surprised by this. They lost, I believe it was last night, like 5-1 against the Stars. So I think this game on Thursday, tomorrow we play the LA Kings. I think this is going to be a big one, and I am surprised by this because I think they're really a complete team in a lot of ways, the LA Kings. I am a little bit surprised by this, but they're kind of hanging on a little bit by their fingernails. This would be a big win for the Nashville Predators tomorrow night. I think this game and then Saturday's game against, again, I can't believe I'm saying it, the Arizona Coyotes. I think those 2 games are going to tell you a lot about what this Nashville Predators team really can do, and how competitive they're going to be down the stretch. But yeah, the Kings, I'm a little worried about them.
Well, yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for the LA Kings were, I would say about a month ago, we were debating whether Cam Talbot was going to be a Vezina front runner. And now all of a sudden he has not been good over the past 3-4 weeks. And that is the big reason for the Kings slide right there. And just real quick, because we're running out of time here, any chance the Predators catch Dallas, Colorado, or Winnipeg, top 3 in the Central right now?
I think keep an eye on Dallas. They're significantly behind Dallas, but Dallas is kind of hot or cold. They get cold at the right time and the Predators get hot. It could be interesting. Plus, we just beat them twice and it felt really good.
Yeah, I agree. No chance of catching the other 2. Dallas is slide, and I don't even think that's going to happen.
I think it would be a stretch. Yeah.
Well, let us know what you guys think. Drop us some comments on the YouTube page or hit us up on Twitter at LO_Predators. That's going to do it for us on today's show. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back tomorrow with an all-new episode. We'll see you then.